that morning the sun was coming up. Flipping, I remember just sitting on this compound 3 on this rooftop. I had my boss, I had Bobby, the forward air controller, there was Steve-O there, the signaller, and we were looking over this compound, and I was looking into where I thought the enemy would have been gravitating from. I was just seeing if there was any sign of movement. We seen 1 or 2 people in and around the area. Couldn't do anything about it because we were working under a rule of engagement where we had to be shot at. We had to identify hostile intent, and we didn't have it. We just had people looking at us. And then just as the sun was rising, there was a massive explosion went off in front of compound 1, and everything on the radios went quiet. I was listening to three radios at the time: the company net, the battle group net, and the artillery net. And nobody was saying anything on any of them. And then about 30, 40 seconds later, just heard the call come over from somebody up in compound 1. Casualty, man down, man down. No idea who it was, no idea how it had happened, no idea where the casualty was. Just heard those words. And there was just something about the way it was said, mate, where I was like, I don't think we're going to hear any more information, you could hear the shock and the impact that the explosion obviously had in these individuals. You could just tell it across the radio. Powerful moment.
Yeah. And then I'm guessing at that moment, your mindset is doing something different. What's happening in your head?
I've had millions of pounds worth of training spent on me. So you think about all of the times of aircraft in the air, all costs money. Using the weapon systems, all costs money. Mm-hmm. Millions of pounds of training. I'm at the absolute tip of my game. So all of these courses I always went on, I'd always end up top student or in and about there. So, really, really professional. I don't say that in an arrogant way. I think it's really important because everything I would have done in training was textbook, and it was professional, and it was executed to the highest of the ability of the person. That's where my brain went to straight away, mate. But there was something that happened deep inside me because this was real. This wasn't training.
Yeah.
And I think it was a thought that somebody up there was in legitimate fucking tatters. Something really bad's happened to one of our people up there. And I need to do whatever I can do to be able to help them as much as possible. And I can remember thinking to myself, where's the artillery? What's the gun target line? What was the last aircraft we heard? What weapon systems do they have? And I can just remember going through all of these things in my head. And I remember looking down, and my boss was looking up at me, and I was kind of up on my knees here, and I was kind of buzzing to do something. I had my hand on my pressel, just ready to press it and say something. And everybody was looking at me as if they were looking at me for information, and I was looking at them as if I was looking at them for information. Then all of a sudden I just turned to my boss and I went, "Boss, I'm off. I'm going up with him." And my boss didn't question anything. He just gave me a thumbs up. And I jumped off the rooftop where I was. And I can remember as soon as I jumped off the rooftop, I can remember thinking, I don't know the cleared route. This area here is a minefield. Mm-hmm. And we haven't painted the lines. We weren't painting the lines at the time. And I can remember looking at the ground and thinking to myself, if I was the enemy, where would I plant the bombs? That was always my go-to line. If I was the enemy, where would I plant them? And there was a ditch. And I thought to myself, well, I'd get in the ditch to give myself cover from sight and cover from fire. I'm going to avoid the ditch. So I looked up to my left, and there was this forward-facing slope. So if you're the enemy, you can see everything that happens on that slope. And I thought to myself, well, that's the stupidest route. Nobody's ever going to come down that route. That's what route I'm going to take because it's less likely to have any bombs. So I ran up onto this hill. And as I got up to the top of the hill, I heard this kind of snap, this crack. And it was a round coming past that sonic boom of it. And it strangely made me feel comfortable because I realized it was really inaccurate. It was quite a bit over my head. And it's that whole thing of seizing the initiative. I always remember that being one of the principles of artillery, that violence of action. Overwhelm the enemy, do it aggressively, do it violently. Once you seize the initiative, you just keep that application of violence going. That violence of action will win you wars. And I can just remember thinking to myself, it's worked. I've seized the initiative. I've got the momentum. And I can remember going into the back of the compound and having a really clear plan in my head. Want to find out who the casualty is, because Mert's going to be on its way already, no doubt. My boss has that medical emergency helicopter on wheels up already. And what I'll be able to do is give them a briefing while they're in the air. We just shove our guy on board. There doesn't need to be a handover on the ground, and they'll be able to go on. Then I'll speak to the boss and I'll say, what bangs do you want and where? Then I'll start to coordinate artillery. And I can remember getting in through the back of the compound, and there wasn't anybody that looked like a casualty or anything, mate. And it was evident that there was people in shock within the compound. And there was a bit of inaction. I don't think that's unfair to say. And I remember everybody, I don't care how nice you are, everybody's got this angry little Viking of a human being within us. That person who turns into an absolute warhammer, an absolute ground hammer. And I can remember just feeling that anger, that frustration, that temper build up in me. And I turned to one of the soldiers within the compound and I was like, "Where's the casualty?" And he pointed out from the compound out into the open. And I moved round, and as I got out into the open, I moved up beside a guy I recognised who was a platoon sergeant. And as I stood beside him, I could make out our soldier still out in the open by himself. And I can just remember thinking to myself, we've got that 2-minute golden window. I've covered about 175 metres of ground so far. I'm carrying more than my own body weight, mate, you know. I've got all of my equipment, all of my radios, all of my weapon systems. I can just remember thinking they can't have too long. And I started thinking about artillery. Where do I need to place the artillery? How do we win this firefight? How do I create this violence of action for us to be able to go and safely get our casualty? And as I was thinking about all of those really logical, all of those complex things, I was thinking about them in a really deep manner. I became aware that I was running.
Okay.
And I hadn't just started running, mate. I'd been running for quite some time already. I was completely out in the open, mate. Completely exposed, getting close to the casualty. And I had no idea that I was doing this. My brain was doing one thing. My body was doing another. It was a complete passenger. And I just remember thinking to myself, get him. Take him back to cover. Take him back to the rest of the troops. And then call in the artillery. And then just as I was getting up to him, just as I was about to get a hold, something came past my nose. It felt like my ears popped. The whole air around me just erupted, mate. The enemy were sat with what I believe to be 3 belt-fed machine guns. The platoon commander put in the ride-up. They were 75 metres away, waiting for somebody to go into that killing zone of the ambush. And it was me that sprung it. And I could just remember thinking to myself, it's too far to go back to the rest of the troops. So I grabbed a hold of the casualty and I took him further into the ambush. There was a wall up beside where the enemy were. So the enemy were on the other side of this wall. And that was my nearest point of cover. So that's just where I moved towards. And I could just remember thinking at any point, one of these rounds is going to cut through me. Body will drop. Everything will go dark. That'll be it. Job done. And instead, I heard something over my shoulder. And whenever I turned and looked over, that platoon sergeant, the guy who had stood there with for a few seconds, he had run straight into that ambush with me, mate. And this is something that I think is really, really important to point out. So I'd say that courage comes in 2 forms. There's hot courage and then there's cold courage. The thing that I did was hot courage, and there's no thought process that goes with it. Your body responds, it reacts, it does what it does. You're on autopilot. What Al done was cold courage. He seen that ambush, mate. He witnessed that initial explosion, and he still decided to come out to me. And for me, that's absolutely incredible. That's somebody who's going to be there no matter what, right? You know, that's somebody who's got your back completely.
Mm.
And then between the two of us, we got a hold of the casualty and we got him in behind the wall. Al started picking a fight behind me with the enemy. I turned my focus to the casualty. I'm not going to say too much, just because I'm friends with his friends. I'm friends with his family. But there was nothing for me to do, and I didn't want to believe that, but I just kept working and working. And then Al just put this gentle hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Gary, he's gone, mate. Just he's gone. You need to stop working." And I sat back and I was like, "Al, who is it?" And he replied to me, he said, "It's Chris." Like, Chris was one of the good pals with us within the FST. And I'm not religious or anything, but I just sat with him and I held his hand and I had a few words with him. It just felt like the right thing to do, you know. Even if it didn't do anything for me, you know, if it was important for him, that's kind of why I'd done it. And then Al came over again and he turned around to me and he said, "We need to get to work." And it's as gentle as you like, but just the way he said it, I knew it was really important I got my shit together. And I suddenly became aware that on the far side of the wall, there were voices. Not just random voices, but very, very disciplined voices. I couldn't speak enough of the local language, but I knew that there was a commander. I could hear him giving out orders. I could hear commands from one or two people, and I could just remember thinking to myself, fuck, sounds like he's giving out QPOs. Sounds like he's a fucking section commander, platoon sergeant here. And me and Al, we turned our focus completely to them. I blew my barrel out, put so many rounds through my rifle that I had to cycle my weapon on every single shot. We were honestly toe-to-toe with what's been assessed to be an equivalent fighting force. So there was a platoon of strength of them versus a platoon of us. And we were in a desperate, shitty situation, mate. It was wild. No other way to put it. And we were probably, I'd say we were probably on a higher likelihood of being overrun whenever I heard this whistle overhead. And as soon as I heard the whistle and knew exactly what it was, but I looked up and I seen this A-10 come in, American tank buster, the Warthog, come in, mid-level, kind of show of force, popped off a few flares. And I quickly got on the radio and I turned around to Bobby, the forward air controller, and I was like, "Bobby, mate, tell me he's got eyes on me." And Bobby was like, "No, mate, he can't see you." And I was like, "Shit." So I got a smoke grenade, popped the smoke grenade up my feet, and I was like, "Tell me he's got eyes on smoke." And Bobby came back and he was like, "Yeah, he's got eyes on smoke." And I was like, "That's my position. There's two of us here. We've got one casualty." And the pilot came back and he was like, "Yep, confirm, I've got eyes on you." And I said, "Bobby, mate, everything to the east of me is enemy. Everything on the far side of the wall." And the pilot turned around and he went, "They're on top of him." And Bobby was like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Mate, I don't have time to give you these 9 lines." So those 9 legal lines of information for us to call that aircraft in. Don't have time for a 9-liner, mate. Just tell him to do what he needs to do. Fucking Bobby was like, "You know what, mate? Just need you to do what you can do." And the pilot, he had every right to turn around and say, "I am not comfortable. I don't know where friendly troops are. I don't know where civilians are. I don't know the displacement of all of these people on the ground. You're asking me to engage dangerously close to this little Irishman who's on the ground, who I can hear in the background. I'm not willing." And the pilot turned around and he said, "Tell him I'm tipping in." And that's one of the final things you hear, mate, because what you do is you look up at the aircraft and you make sure that it's aiming towards the enemy position. And as soon as you're happy that it's aiming towards the enemy position, you say you're clear hot, and you give him like your initials. And I looked up at this aircraft after Bobby said he's tipping in, and I can remember aiming straight at me, and I thought to myself, holy shit, I've never seen that before. And then I remember thinking to myself, well, they're just on the other side of the wall. It's exactly what he needs to be doing. And I turned around to Bobby and I was like, Bobby, tell him to send it. And Bobby was like, you're clear hot. And he done this gun run on the other side of the wall. And it was bizarre because I seen the smoke come out of his gun. And normally you hear that burp of freedom, that burp. And it was completely different. It sounded like 100 grenades went off on the other side of the wall beside me. And then I heard the burp off it. And then all I seen was it pulling out, and it was doing like this 45-degree bank, like loop to loop. And he popped off a load of flares. And as he was doing that, the second aircraft attempted to come in, but he had a gun failure. So he banked off straight away. And gun one came back in, and he was lining up, and I was thinking to myself, holy shit, that's the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. And all of the dust, all of the debris, I mean lumps of ground off the trees and everything on the other side of this wall were landed on top of us. That's how close we were to these runs. And I can just remember thinking to myself, shit, that's perfect, that's brilliant. But I haven't told anybody yet I'm still alive. So I quickly got on the radio and I was like, Bobby, Delta Hotel, that's a direct hit. Tell him he's clear to engage again. And he come in and he done a second gun run. And then he done a third gun run. And the other pilot, he's there trying to clear his gun because he's got a jam in it. And then on his third gun run, as he was pulling out, Bobby says that he heard him accidentally press his microphone. And he heard him doing his breathing exercises because of the pressure that the jet was putting on him. Now you got to think, he's flying dangerously close to these enemy troops. He's engaging dangerously close to us. He's losing consciousness. He's doing these constant loop-to-loops. And then on his fourth gun run, because gun 2's not been cleared yet, he's going grid 4-1 Sierra Papa Romeo. Bobby's like, why the fuck's he doing grid references here? He was doing a fighter-to-fighter 9-line control, a handover from his aircraft to other aircraft that are scrambling to our location. Because he's almost Winchester, he's almost out of all of his ammunition, and he knows for us to stand any chance, it's critical that he gives us some support. So while he's doing all of that, he's still able to bang out that 9 lines of control, the most incredible thing we've ever seen in our roles, and actually the biggest momentum, the biggest game changer, the biggest battle winner on that day, because over the course of the next 2.5 hours, we emptied 2 of those A-10 aircraft. We emptied 2 Apache helicopters. We fired a lot of rounds of artillery. I'm not going to say how many. We fired hundreds of rounds of mortars. And ridiculously, somehow we managed to get out of that situation without sustaining a single further casualty. It was the most intense and the most coordinated ambush I've ever experienced from an enemy perspective. And it's unbelievable, and probably easily to justify it as a miracle that nobody else was killed on that day. Unbelievable, mate.
It sounds it. And the fact that the way you described it is incredible as well. So thank you for that. I mean, I don't know what more to say on that at all. To the fact that you lived through that, the fact that you experienced that, the fact that you did what you did for Chris, like, it's amazing. It's incredible.
I think it's really important. I did state there was a bit of inactivity in that compound whenever I got up to it. It's very easy to overlook the human response in these high pressure moments. Those guys had just witnessed one of the most popular, one of the funniest, one of the most outgoing members of their company being killed in front of them. No other way to put it. And it must have been horrific. And I constantly second guess, and I believe that if I had witnessed that, it probably would have impacted how I responded on that day. So I would say that the fact that I had not witnessed it, it made it easier for me to do the things that I did on that day. One of the people on that rooftop actually babysat Chris whenever he was a kid, because Chris's father was a regimental sergeant major of that regiment. So whilst there was inactivity, it was because they had just lost somebody extremely close to them in extremely tragic circumstances. Now, for me, the measure of those people, those men who were in that compound, it isn't how they responded in those 90 seconds after that initial explosion. For me, it's what happened 9 hours later, because we fought through that battle. They got up and they won that battle decisively. No two ways about it. But 9 hours later, after we went back, after we restored all of our equipment, after everybody knew that Chris had been killed and we had packed his equipment and we had done all of that process and all of that stuff that you need to do, we were tasked with another patrol. And we stood up on that gate, and there's something horrific about going out after you've lost somebody to an IED, especially at nighttime, because you're putting your foot on the ground that you cannot see. And every single one of those footsteps can be a pressure pad. And every single one of those soldiers went out in that patrol that night. And they continued to do that for the rest of the 6 months. They might judge themselves for that 90 seconds. They've got 7 months of continuous operations afterwards where I just look at it and I do nothing but take my hat off to them. It's just humbling. And these people, we've already mentioned, so I'm 25, 26 at this time. Some of these people are 18, 19 years old, you know, and they are able and willing to do that for one another. To me, that's just incredible, isn't it? You know, it's just humbling. Massively, massively.
And you've still got the rest of your own tour to go forward with, right? Yeah. From that, what do you want to share? Because I think there's some other things that happen on that tour. Because that's quite a massive thing to go through. But then there's more, right?
Yeah. First week of a tour, I can remember military trim process broke down at this point, because everybody who was in that compound were all pals with Chris.
Okay.
And the guy who led trim was one of his best mates. So whenever he came in with the paperwork and he was like, Gary, I believe you were out with him. Can you tell me about what happened? I was like, no, there is not a chance I'm going to tell you what happened. So I got a hold of the trim paperwork myself, and I filled it in. And I refused to talk with anybody about what had happened, because if it was somebody from outside, I would have been fine. But the fact that it was people who was intimate and knew him, and they didn't need to know what had happened, I didn't want to, you know. So I stopped sleeping. I can remember being in one engagement, and it was probably about 4 days later. And I knew my boss wasn't quite happy with my mental state, because what he'd done was he brought somebody else. So we were split up into different elements. He brought the other person who had the same qualifications as me. He brought him to our team to come out on this patrol. And I can remember we got into a tick, and I looked at application of artillery, and it was no option, because there were compounds in the area and we didn't know if there were civilians in them. And we were working off a 400-meter rule at the time. If there were potential for civilians within 400 meters of artillery, we would not use it. We would not engage with it. So, and I turned around and I said to the ground commander, I said, I can't do my job here. And he was like, all right. And I was like, I'll just be over here. Give me a shout if you need me. And we were legitimate troops in contact, rounds coming past us on this rooftop. And I wasn't sleeping through the night. And I just put my head down and fell asleep on this rooftop in the middle of a tick.
Really?
Yeah. And my boss and the guy, they woke me up a wee bit later, and they were like, "Good nap," and I was like, "Yeah, actually it was," and it was the first sleep I'd had for a bit, and yeah, there was just this slow kind of coming back to me being kind of, yeah, me being me again. So I just describe it as I wasn't suffering with nightmares. I wasn't suffering with any kind of trauma. I just became numb. Very, very numb. In fact, I'm a big fan of Dick Winters from Band of Brothers. And he talks about the 3 stages of combat exposure. One is, it'll never be me, I'm too good. And that's what you get from your initial training phase. Phase 2 is where you experience some combat and you see people around you getting hurt and you're like, holy shit, could be me. Could be me. And then stage 3 is that stage of, I'm next. And he said people go down 1 or 2 routes on stage 3 where they want nothing to do with it and they want to get away from any combat whatsoever. Or the other stage where they're like, I'm going to take as many of them with me as I can. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to be a ground hammer. I kind of went that way.
Okay.
So I was happy. I was accepting of it. Whenever it came to me having to do my job, I was going to be absolutely professional and on it, but I was just numb. Just numb, void of emotion, void of any care, any concern. And yeah, it's a bizarre place to be, mate. But over the course of the next couple of weeks, and the boss switched me then from being on the patrols, because I was just patrols, switched me from patrols into the platoon house down with one of my other pals, and it was just me and one other person supporting a platoon down there completely in isolation. And yeah, I slowly came back to being me again, mate. It's a bizarre one.
Yeah. And everyone's going to experience it differently, aren't they? So the fact that you managed to come back to be more you over the coming weeks, I suppose, is good. It's good.
Whilst the TRIM process broke down in Afghanistan, and TRIM stands for Trauma Risk and Management, and basically what they're doing is they're looking through a checklist of signs and symptoms that you're dealing with trauma in an adverse way.
Yeah.
So none of them were actually present with me because I wasn't dealing with trauma in an adverse way. But whenever I got back to the UK, I was actually pinged and put through the assessment process. So I went down to DRMC Headley Court and I went in with a couple of psychologists. And over the course of, I think it was about 2.5, 3 days, they had a number of discussions, a number of chats with them. And they turned around to me at the end and they went, rather than post-traumatic stress disorder, which is where it has a negative and a detrimental impact to your everyday life, we're seeing signs and symptoms of post-traumatic growth. And I was like, I've never heard of that. Tell me more about it. And what they were saying was, you've experienced an extremely traumatic event, but now what it's given you a bit of an incentive. It's given you a bit of a kick up the ass. You want to enjoy life. You want to make the most out of life. So rather than it having an adverse effect, it's actually having a real growth effect on you. And I was like, I've never heard of it before, And they said, but we've never really given up this diagnosis. And the reason being is quite often people get referred to us because they're suffering. If people aren't suffering and they've got post-traumatic growth, then we would never see them. They say, and we believe the numbers are actually quite large of people who do this growth after trauma, but we don't have the numbers. We can only measure what we get. Therefore, the numbers will be skewed. So I think it's really important to say that because I was dealing with a little bit of guilt, almost about how much I was loving life, if that makes sense, And you almost look at post-traumatic stress and think, I should have that because of the trauma that I've been through. And I know people who are going through that, and I feel guilty because I'm not. And actually, it's really, really important. If you are feeling growth, if you are feeling benefit because of a traumatic event, it's not because you're being an arse. It's just your emotional response to that trauma. Do you know? It's powerful.
Yeah. Well, and that didn't end there, did it? That tour. Something else happened. Do you want to share that last bit?
Which one was that there?
So,
my brain doesn't quite function too well. Is this me?
This is your last patrol.
The last patrol. So I went out there. I had this invite to potentially trial out for the Commonwealth Games team. We were on a bit of a clearance patrol. We were trying to create a bubble for the next company who was coming in to our patrol base. So we were just pushing the enemy aggressively, and we were just pushing and shaping the battlefield, try to give a bubble for this new group coming in. And we got to our limit of exploitation, and we were making a hasty retreat back. So I'd set my Bergen down, that heavy Bergen again, and then I picked it up. And anybody will know this here, the body armor isn't great ergonomics wise, so it's hard to put stuff on. So what I'd done was I hooked it over my shoulder, and I kind of threw it up with my weight. So you throw your weight into it and hope that the momentum carries it up. But as I'd done that, the shoulder kind of stayed in the same place, and I felt a bit of a tear in my arm. So I managed to get my day sack up on, and I noticed that as I hung my rifle down, that pull on my shoulder was actually quite comforting, because if I took the rifle out of my hand, there was a bit of pain in my shoulder. My shoulder didn't quite feel right. So I was going back, and every so often I'd take the rifle out of my arm and I'd move it, and I'd feel a lot of popping, a bit of grinding and stuff happening within the front bit of my shoulder. But if I hung my rifle, it was all right. So I got back to the patrol base, took all of my kit off, and then I realised that the shoulder just felt really loose, and it wasn't quite sitting right. And I got one of the Fijians to hold it, and I just thought maybe it's just out of place a bit. And we did a little bit of traction. Now I'm buzzing on adrenaline here, because we've just done this really hasty extraction from a really tasty bit of town. And he wasn't happy, because he could feel it popping and grinding. And then I thought I'll leave it for a bit. I woke up the next day, and there wasn't too much pain involved. But again, the shoulder just wasn't functioning, and I was struggling to get my weapon up into my shoulder and stuff. And I realised that I'd done a bit of damage to it. So I got extracted. I got flown back, medevaced back just before we'd done our handover stuff. I got sent back to the UK in front of all of the advance party. They did a bit of an investigation on my shoulder, and I'd managed to tear the whole rotator cuff into like a slap lesion. So the whole forward end of my shoulder was all torn, and elements of the socket had come away, and all of the insertion of the chest muscle. And I had lots of floating bits all round inside that forward edge. So they turned around to me and they were like, "It's surgery, buddy. Shoulder opened up. You need to get that all shaped out, reshaped, replaced, and that's going to be that." So my Commonwealth Games thing went down the plug completely. Lost it all on my final patrol in 2009 in Afghanistan. Absolutely gutted, mate.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking.
You're in pain. It's a tour to remember.
It
or
was.
Not.
Yeah.
Which way you want to look at it.
No, it's put me where I am today. So absolutely, yeah, a tour to remember. But yeah.
How did that surgery go?
Great. The surgeon had done another fantastic athlete, Andrea, friend of common of ours, and I got chatting with him, and he was like, "I can build it again for archery, or I can build it again for work." And I went with the archery option. I didn't tell the military this year, so he rebuilt it again, but it was never quite how it was before. And for example, I went from shooting out of 600 on those Portsmouth rounds, I was scoring 590s. I went down to about 540, 550. So it had it doesn't sound like a lot of points, but it's an enormous amount whenever you're shooting at that high level. 2 points is a lot at that high level. Yeah. So, you know, it had a significant impact on it, but it didn't prevent me from shooting, which is kind of nice in a way as well, you know. So, yeah.
So your return back from Afghanistan is surgery, and that's essentially recovery as well, right?
Yeah, and Dayton. And
Dayton.
Yeah, so this is the point where I came back, and while whenever I went on my first R&R from Afghanistan in 2009, one of the guys who was working with Sticky, he had emailed his sister from my email address. So I'd left myself logged in stupidly. And he had emailed his sister. And then whenever I went on R&R, I actually went on a date with her. So whenever I came back, we were all on the radio and we were all doing the evening prayers, as we call it, so all checking in. And then one of the lads, I think it was Taff Morgan. Taff Morgan comes up and he was like, "Paddy, you on the net?" And I went, "Yeah, mate." And then he was like, "Sticky, you on the net?" And Sticky went, "Yeah, mate." And he went, "Paddy, how did your date go with Sticky's sister?" Over the radio like out there. And I was like, "No." So Sticky was like, "We need to have a chat, Paddy." But yeah, he was sweet with it. So yeah, whenever I came back, me and Millie, we actually started dating properly at that point then. And then yeah, we hit the ground running, and yeah, that was the romance blossoming to where we are today.
Nice.
So yeah, I kept busy in that rehab process.
Yeah. And then that brings us into 2010. In 2010, you were awarded something. So how did that come about? How did you find out about that, and what was you awarded?
Yeah, so we talk about synchronicity and these dates and these certain things coming around. So it was the 14th of March 2010. Considering that action that I was just talking about was the 14th of March 2009. And the night before, we had been out on a battery get together. And we ended up quite drunk, and I lost half of the night. But the bit where I was started to lose it, one of the big Fijians in my battery was causing a little bit of grief. He was starting to get a little bit leery, and me and him are best pals. So the last thing I remember from this night is trying to ease him down, trying to de-escalate him, trying to calm him down. Then the next morning we were in work and we were all having a laugh about how we can't remember what the hell happened. And next thing I get a shout, and the sergeant major came running up and he went, "Paddy, CO's office now." And I was like, "Sir, what have I done?" And he went, "I have no idea." He said, "But the RSM told me to get you ASAP and you're into the CO straight away." And I was like, "Oh, fuck." So I turned around and killed him with the Fijian, and I was like, "What the fuck did you do?" He's like, I don't know. I can't remember." And I was there like, "Show me your knuckles." And all of his knuckles were straight, so he hadn't anyone or anything. And I was like, "Oh my God." I went down, mate. So we've been up in the garages. I got my cleanest, my best kit out, my most polished boots, which are still in shit state anyway. And I went sprinting up to this office, and my sergeant major took me down, marched me in to the RSM's office. And as I went to halt, the RSM went, "No drill." And I was like, "No drill?" And I was kind of stood there, and he was like, "Battery sergeant major, thank you." And sent him out. And then he closed the door and he went, "Paddy." And he had never called me Paddy before. Like, and considering here, I'm a Lance Jack, one of the most juniors people in the regiment. He went, "I'm going to walk you into the CO's office." He said, "Please walk in. No drill. You're going to have a chat with the commanding officer here." He said, "We are here to support you for what's about to happen." And I was like, okay. So I walked in, and genuinely, I'm thinking, fucking somebody in my family's died here or something. What's going on? I'm no longer thinking this is about last night. So he walked me into the CO's office, and the CO looked up at me and he went, "What did you do during your Afghan tour?" And I was just there like, it was a busy tour, sir. It was a busy tour. And straight away your head's going all over. Shit, am I going to be in one of these inquiries? What's going on here? And he turned around and he went, "I have received notice from the Ministry of Defence that you are going to pick up an honour and award for your actions in 2009. He said, "I have no idea what actions it was." He said, "I have no idea what award it is you are getting." He said, "I can just tell you this is not going to be a milk bottle top." And I was like, "What do you mean, sir?" And he was like, "This is big. This is significant. This is probably going to change your life." And I can remember turning around saying, we need to get a grip of this. I said, we're from Northern Ireland. I don't want my name going out there. And he turned around and he said, "This is going to be officially launched next week." I think it was the 21st of March was the official launch date. He said, you have 1 week to get your shit together. He said, you need to inform family. You need to do everything that you can in that time just to make sure that you're in the best position possible. And I was like, all right, sir. And he was like, we have no idea what to do or how you should do it, but just try to set yourself up as good as possible. So I went out of there. I went down to my sergeant major and I said, something's happening to me. I can't tell you what it is, but I can't be in work for the next week. I need to go and sort my shit out. And he was like, okay. And I think it was because of the nature of everything that had happened up to that point. So when I went and phoned my brother and I was like, Steve, mate, you know, and he's a sergeant major at this time, I think. And I was like, Steve, mate, I've come off honours and awards. I've no idea what it is. CO's just told me it's not milk bottle top. And he was like, mate, what did you do on tour? So I gave him a high level of some of them. And he turned around to me and he said, given what they're saying, he said, it's a military cross or higher. And I was like, fuck. And he turned around and he went, you're going to have post-nominals after your name. And I can just remember sitting there thinking, shit, this is big. And then next thing I knew, I was getting a phone call. And it was people from the MOD, and they were saying, we're going to bring your parents across to an event next week. Where do your parents live? What are their names? We're going to send somebody round to their house. And I was like, shit. So I was passing all of this stuff across, and I was just trying to sort all of my shit out. And then the next day I got called up to the CO's office again. And this time, again, no marching, no walking in. And the CO turned around to me and he went, Bom, you're going to be receiving the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross. And I just remember sitting down in his office and going, like, you know, just completely humbled. And then he turned around and he was like, it's for your actions on this day. And he started to talk me through it. And straight away I can remember thinking, I'm with Chris's wife tonight. We're having a memorial service for him. I need to inform her. So I give her the heads up that something was coming. There's going to be a bit of press interest and stuff. But I could just feel this all building up to a point where I was just there like, I am a passenger. You know, I am just going along for the ride here. This is just insane and humbling. And a week went by. I went through all of my Facebook stuff. I removed everything about Afghanistan. I was a member of CAR forums, so I removed any mention of military service. The night before the event, I spoke to Army media and I turned around and went, is it possible for me not to be part of this? And they went, yes, they said, but it actually draws more attention. I want to be redacted from the London Gazette because everybody's name gets put into it. And what they said was, if you get your name redacted from it, 8, 10 years, 12 years down the line, you will still get entered. They said, and that tends to be what special forces do. So they get redacted, they get entered at a later date, but that can draw more attention to you because people will then think, because it was redacted for actions in 2009.
Like why?
Yeah, why? He must be special forces. They said, so the best thing you can do is just go through with the process. Just be named on it. You'll see it tomorrow. They'll read out a bit of your citation. They'll read out your name. And then that will be it. Tea and cakes, job done, off you go. And we went down to Artillery House in London, where the Honourable Artillery Company are. My parents were flown over. Up to this point, my mum and dad... Well, my dad kind of had an idea what I did, but my mum thought that I worked in an office in the military.
Oh, okay.
And first thing she knew was we got walked in and there was rows and rows and rows of seats. And the live press were just stacked along the wall. And we were put in seats. And then an element of each one of our citations were read out. And the press were there watching. And I can just remember thinking, 5 minutes and it'll be over. Not a chance. Not a chance. And then we got whisked away from that event, sat down with my parents, and then there was this round robin where journalists after journalists would just come round and they'd just be asking you question after question after question. And I'm from a world where a little bit of information is too much information. So I'm trying to give them enough of a story without disclosing too much about my background. And, you know, I'm from Northern Ireland and all of that stuff, which is quite difficult with the accent. And then one of the a journalist looked at my mum, and my mum's just there with her jaw dropped while I'm recounting some of the actions on that day. And the journalist looked at her and went, "You look surprised by this." And she turned around and she says, "I thought he worked at a desk in an office." Well, fuck me. The next day, that was front page of the Belfast Telegraph. Hero's mother thought son worked. And that was Bush. And my parents had press at them from Northern Ireland. It was all over the papers. And it just went from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and just escalated. It was insane. And yeah, it was just that preparation of it. I thought the army were shocking. They were awful at doing that. You probably met Willie Appiata, the VC guy from New Zealand, who was at first Invictus Games with us. There's a program in and around him receiving his VC. It was very similar circumstances to myself, but just not the enormity that Willie experienced. What the VC experience is just unreal. I'd class it as horrific, but for certain little elements, that was my world at that time, and it was horrible, and it could not have been further away from anything that I ever wanted. I don't even think I had a military picture on my Facebook up to this point, and all of a sudden, cameras, live streamed, unbelievable.
And is it the same day the Queen gives you the medal, or is that a different moment?
Yeah, so that was March. I believe my investiture was possibly June time. I think it might have been early June. I really struggle with dates now because of medication and stuff. But essentially, received notice that we were to go to Buckingham Palace for an investiture, word that I had never heard before. And I believe that's where all honours and awards, so things like MBEs, knighthoods, military recognition, that's where they happen in that official royal kind of capacity. No idea who was doing the investiture, and I was allowed to bring 3 guests. So at the time, my oldest brother was on tour in Afghanistan. So the 3 people I took was my mum, my dad, and my then girlfriend, Millie. Arrived at Buckingham Palace, and the first thing that I noticed was the Royal Standard was flying. So the Queen was at home, and you can get any member of the royal family. I'm not going to lie, I would have been heartbroken if it wasn't the Queen. So what happens is you go into the main quadrangle of Buckingham Palace. You get taken through. You go in through the main doors at the back end of the quadrangle, and then you go up a set of stairs. And then there's a point where guests go off into one direction, and then all people who are a part of the investiture itself, they go off to another waiting room to be briefed about the etiquette and the actions that are needed. So I said my goodbye to my parents, and it was at this point where we heard, "It's the Queen." And I was just there like, holy shit. I'm in the Queen's house. She's invited me here, and she's going to be giving me this award. So went down into the main room where it all was all happening. I was stood quite nervous. I looked beside me. There was another nervous guy who was stood there, and we started to have a chat, and it was Jensen Button. So
oh, really?
yeah, he was receiving an MBE, and didn't talk to him anything about motor racing. Didn't talk to me anything about the military. We were just 2 nervous people about to go in front of the Queen and hoping that everything was going to go absolutely perfect. So yeah, the way they do it is it's civilian awards first in the queue, and then as the award gets more and more senior within the military, that's where you get further and further towards the back. And apparently what the Queen what she did was she was saving up as much time so she could spend it with the soldiers unbelievably. So I was right towards the back of the queue, with it being like a tier 2 gallantry award. So the Victoria Cross is the only gallantry award that's higher. The Victoria and the George Cross, and they're actually done in their own investitures. They're not done in group. They're done private investitures. And so I was right towards the back of the queue. I was stood with a guy who I had got to know, who was picking up a bar to his DSO, ex-UK Special Forces, flipping 2 Distinguished Service Orders to his name. As the line creeped down this massive snake all the way down to see the Queen, there comes a point where you go into the back of the ballroom and you look down, and all you see is people being knighted.
Wow.
By the Queen. You see all of these investitures going on, and you're stood there in the queue like, I'm about to do that. And it's got all of this orchestra playing the music and everything, and it's just a different world. Now, picture it, mate. I grew up on a council estate in Northern Ireland. I have no GCSEs. I have no qualifications to my name. And I am stood in Buckingham Palace after the Queen's invited us there with my parents, with my girlfriend, about to step up in front of the Queen. It's different worlds, mate, isn't it? You know, it's just bizarre, the contrast. And I can remember I got up to the first person who told me to wait, and then I think it was, I can't remember who it was in front of me. Somebody went off, and then it was my cue. Walked up, halt in the middle, turned, give a bow, and then stepped in towards the Queen. And then the first words to me were, and I can say this now, sadly, because she's passed away. The first words to me were, I read about how you tried to save your friend Chris. And I was just there like, shit. And by this point, I've seen the official citation. Doesn't mention that he's my friend. So it doesn't mention it throughout the whole official citation at all. It doesn't call him Chris in the citation. It calls him Lance Corporal Hargett. But I don't know what briefing she gets and what cues there is. She was on it. Mm-hmm. She was absolutely incredible. And I've got video on everything off it, but actually spent quite a bit of time talking to her, and having quite an interesting conversation, and did not feel rushed in the slightest. Felt like she wanted to take all of that time there. And then there was a bizarre thing that happened a couple of months later. I was actually I was on exercise down in Dartmoor, and somebody came walking across the area shouting, Paddy. And we were only meant to be checking in every 24 hours. And I was like, is this a no duff situation? And then they started shouting, no duff. So I got up and I was like, what's up? And they were like, Paddy, mate, the regiment's on honour guard for the Queen up in Holyrood Barracks. And I was like, yeah. And they went, the Queen's requested your presence. And I was like, you are kidding me. They were like, no. So there was me. There was 2, I'll not say their names, 2 members of my regiment who had military crosses. Apparently, whenever my commanding officer, now I didn't hear this directly from him, but apparently whenever my commanding officer went in to say that his regiment were doing the honour guard, the Queen turned around and said, oh, fantastic. Well, Bombardier Prout, will Bombardier such and such, will Bombardier such and such, will they be on parade? He went, yes, Your Majesty. So that was us. Flying up the road. I had to catch a flight up. I got signalled by the flipping the dogs and everything in the airport, because it still cam cream and covered in flipping weapon oil and everything like. But yeah, rushed us all the way up, and I ended up opening the door for her vehicle whenever it arrived at Holyrood, and as she inspected the honour guard, I stood and had a chat with Prince Philip. It's unbelievable, amazing. Mate.
Yeah, incredible lady, incredible. I can't say much more on that either. Like, I don't know what else to ask, because that's incredible. That she was always like that, wasn't she? We heard the stories of how into the person, the people, the event, whatever it might be, and that just proves it, because she asked for you guys by name and wanted you to be there, linking the regiment to you. It's like, amazing.
Not my story, but I've heard it from somebody who I trust enough to put my name to this here. I believe it was the King's Troop were doing a guard, and I believe it was at Windsor. Now, my details might be a little bit mixed up here, but the guard commander was going around and checking in on soldiers on their posts, and got to one of the posts, and the soldier was absent. Started to freak out, is on horseback, went riding round the corner to see the Queen sat at a table eating ice cream. And who was beside them? The soldier who was on guard eating an ice cream alongside her. The Queen thought it was a little bit hot, decided to have a bit of a chat with the soldier, and turned around to the guard commander and said, I hope you don't mind, I borrowed one of your soldiers. Now, I've heard that from a credible enough person to absolutely believe it, but that that's not a story that, I've heard similar stories like that before. But yeah, there was something personal there between the Queen, wasn't there, and her soldiers.
And her soldiers, for sure.
Powerful stuff.
It really is. So what's happened with your life now? You've just gone through that kind of crazy tour. You've come back. You've gone through recovery with surgery with your shoulder. You've met the Queen, receiving that medal. What's happening up here?
I'm in a really great place mentally, physically. Everything's in a sound position. I'm doing promotion courses. I'm picking up more jobs. The big frustration with the military is they've turned around and told me I can no longer do that job operationally. So I can train people. I can be part of the team, but be part of the teams. But I'm in more of a command post, more of the strategic part of it. Certain people didn't want me exposed to any danger because it would be a publicity own goal if anything was to happen to me.
Okay, yeah.
So I got really pissed off with that, very angry, and I decided, you know what, I want to teach new recruits. So I put my name in the hat for becoming an instructor.
Are you a corporal? I mean,
full screw, yeah. So
Bombardier.
Bombardier at this time, yeah. So picked up, went on another card, course, done really well, got promoted on the last day of it as top student. So and then it was actually, I think it was written in the report that a must for phase 1 training or Sandhurst. So I was already being plugged for phase 1 and for Sandhurst to be an instructor.
Okay.
And I went on that. It was one of the initial points where they were doing a potential instructor's CARDA. So they were actually doing a CARDA course for you to go and be an instructor. Again, placed brilliantly on that there. And then I went into the training cycle of skillet arms, all of my qualifications to teach new recruits. Went to Harrogate in 2013. Life was going amazingly. It was 2012 by that point.
Is that Harrogate to teach?
To teach, yeah, 16, 17-year-old soldiers coming into the military. I was going to be their adult figure. Okay. I'd get assigned 12 young soldiers, and it was my job to administrate, organise, to teach, to train them, so that whenever they finished a 42-week training period, I think it was, they were in a position to join the field army as adult soldiers. So it's quite the undertaking. And some of these people, you'd have to teach them how to brush your teeth. Some of them how to tie laces. Other ones were absolute sponges and would ask me questions that I didn't know the answers to, so it was a real spectrum of individuals coming into it. And it was one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever done in the military, but at the same time, one of the most challenging. Okay. Because it's 18-hour days. 3 of those days is a 24-hour duty a week. You'd have constant, proper duty of care challenges. You're being inspected by Ofsted. Okay. All elements like that there, and you just have to be absolutely on your game 100% of the time. And we went through about 39 weeks of that training with these recruits. We were on the final exercise before they passed out, and I was up a hill in Scotland with them. And I was still talking to one young recruit. I turned to talk to another one, had a bit of weight on my back. All it did was shifted my weight from my left leg to my right. And I heard a big crack. My right leg just snapped, mate. And because I had all of that weight on my back, the leg just kept breaking underneath me as the weight came down on top of me. And again, like with spleen, like with shoulder, I'd got away with all stuff during tours, and then I managed to hurt myself in pretty comical kind of circumstances, isn't it? You know, you don't expect just to turn and break your leg, but that's exactly what I'd done. 2 hours to get me off the hill to the hospital. So to carry me off, get me in the ambulance and get me across the hospital. Went into surgery the next day. I didn't realize this at the time, but I spent 7.5 hours in surgery where they repinned my foot, tib and fib, had to pin it together. The foot to the bottom to that whole platform. Did a lot of damage to the ligaments up the inside of the ankle as well. They were all pretty much torn and destroyed. And I thought it was a 6-week cast on, job done, back to normal training. Bit of rehab and that there. At the 6-week point, they took the cast off. My foot was horrific, mate. It's like something out of The Walking Dead.
Wow.
It was grey, no circulation, getting constant cold injuries in it. So it was actually so bad they put it in a cast for another 6 weeks. Went back after those 6 weeks. I looked at it again. And they were like, something's not right here. And surprisingly quickly, I went through the whole process, and they identified that due to the nerve damage that I had suffered through the break, I had something called complex regional pain syndrome, CRPS. Now, normally people wait around about 18 months for a diagnosis. I had a diagnosis in about 14 weeks. So, you know, it was really, really quick. So they gave me every single chance that they could. But basically what that means is every sensation my foot feels, it perceives it as extreme pain. So simple things like getting a shower, I'd put like a big plastic bag over my foot and sellotape it off, you know, because just the water running over it felt like somebody had put my foot in a fire, you know. And then simple little things like the quilt covers at nighttime, just you know the way they just sometimes fall on top really gently. That was excruciating pain. So every little sensation, complete pain. And I had a non-functioning ankle, mate. Could not use it at all. So I stayed at home. And the military's words were, you're not going to walk again. Your career in the armed forces is over. We might cut your leg off. And that's what they told me. They were like, go home. We'll sort out your pension. You'll maybe be able to volunteer with a charity every so often, but that's it, job done. Unbelievable.
What year was this?
2013, mate.
2013?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I broke my leg 4 weeks before I got married. And then they delivered the message to me that was it, done about 10 weeks after the marriage. So if it was tough for me, I can't imagine what it was like for my wife, because she said yes to somebody who was fully able-bodied, who went climbing with her, who was a mountain leader, who loved running. And then all of a sudden she'd get married to somebody on crutches. And then next thing she knows, the person she's married is disabled. He's flipping lost his job. You know, he's probably not going to work again. And he's going to be in pain for the rest of his life. You know, I think it was tough for me, but I can't imagine what it was like for her. You know.
But she's still here. She's still supporting you. She's with you.
Yeah.
So great woman, right?
Yeah, hit me a kick up the arse every so often whenever I need it, mate. You know. So yeah. But it was ridiculous how fast it happened. And I don't hold any grudges against the military, because it's a machine, and it has to produce fighting people that are capable of taking a fight to the enemy. But I understand why people say that it can feel inhuman, because are they fit? No, they need to get out, you know.
Yeah.
Are they fit? No. Can they get fit? Yeah, they can do. Okay, let's keep them in. Let's work on them. But you know, that's what way the system has to be. But yeah, it does feel very impersonal, especially that element about discharge on Christmas Eve. Because I can remember getting the paperwork through, and I turned around to them and I phoned them up and I went, "Can you discharge me 2 weeks before?" And they were like, "No." And I was like, I don't want to be sat on Christmas Eve knowing today's my last day of the military. Can we do it 2 weeks afterwards? And they were like, no, that's just your run out date. That's how I came in. And there was just no flexibility in there. And I could just remember thinking, yeah, it's so impersonal, isn't it? You know, they deal with numbers. They don't deal with people.
Yeah. That's terrible. That's a terrible way of ending it, you know. But how do you go from there to where you are now? So what were the stepping stones? You left the military at the end of 2015. That happened in 2013. So what do those subsequent years look like? Are you going for rehab? Are you doing other things to keep your mind occupied?
Prescription medication haze. I do not have much of an idea of what happened in those 2 years.
Okay.
So I started playing video games. I was drinking lots of wine, doing it socially. I wasn't doing it to get drunk. And I was taking lots of medication. And
to deal with the pain?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the pain was horrific.
Yeah.
No other words for it. And I can remember I was constantly on my computer because I was playing this little tank game. And I can remember coming off it and going on to Facebook and having to skip across it, and then somebody had shared a link. Imagine Dragons music. It's time. It was the original advert for Invictus Games. And I can remember seeing like Archery on there, thinking to myself, fuck, I used to shoot. And then I thought to myself, nah, you can't shoot, you're in pain. You have to shoot sitting down, you know, you have to get a fucking wheelchair and all of this stuff. And then I can just remember thinking to myself, what does Paralympic archery look like? So I went and Googled it, and your guy, Matt Stutzman, popped up, the American limbless archer, got no arms. And that was powerful to see him shooting. But the big shot for me was 2012, he competed in the Olympics, won bronze medal at London, I believe it was. I think it was. And remember the press turned around him and said, do you find it hard to shoot without arms? And he turned around and he replied, I don't know. I've never shot with them. And I can just remember that mindset of, I'm giving myself reasons why I cannot do archery. I've not explored how might I do it. And that was what changed. How might I do this?
Okay.
How might I do that? And straight away, it got the emphasis. It got the blood flowing. I'd been to battle back with the Royal British Legion, and I'd met a few people there, and I was like, tell me more about the Invictus Games. And everybody was getting all of this information. And before I knew it, welfare at Harrogate, they had turned around and said, okay, these are the training dates. We're going to take you down. You're on the list to show up at each one of the events. So we're going to take you down and you're going to get to shoot long. And I can remember rocking up to the first event, and I had equipment, and not everybody had equipment, and you were there. It was at Stoke Mandeville. It was that time that we were all together, and we had this complete mix of people, and we were all just having this great, fantastic time. And I don't know if you can remember this, but our fucking hull got struck by lightning. Can you remember that?
Yeah.
And we had guys in there who had been blown up. We had guys in there with PTSD. And the place, half of the place just split. And then the other half of us were kind of there like, what was that? And we thought it was lightning, and we weren't quite sure. And we were like, there was 3 members of staff, and they went running after the people who they could. And we were like, shit, well, we better go get them. So we went and got everybody, and we kind of brought everybody back together, and we said it's unsafe to shoot because the emergency lights and everything were on. And it was that link of kind of being together, and you know, I'm gonna come after you if you need help. I've no doubt you're gonna come after me. And for me, that was that moment where I was like, you know what, I think I like the state of this journey.
Yeah.
And then it was just that rhythm, that routine, that purpose, you know, that pride, all of those things that just took me on that fantastic journey, leading all the way up to Invictus Games. And it's, whenever I look back on it now, I always talk to people, that's the ingredients. So the Invictus Games, if it happens, amazing. Happy days. But do not underestimate the impact that having that purpose and that goal and that motivation to get you up in the morning, because even without the Invictus Games, I would have changed the way I was living my life completely, just with that process that sits in behind. Does that make sense for you, mate?
100%. Yeah. Just having dates in mind of when you're going to go back to the group that doesn't judge you, that supports you, that wants you to do better. Yeah, absolutely. That's the correct mindset, and that's yeah. I probably echo that. It's probably one of the biggest parts of building up to a set of games. Is that camaraderie, and the coaches that got us.
Yeah,
right. It was great. Yeah,
that piece you mentioned there. That was so important, that judgmental piece, because I can remember going there thinking, I'm just injured, you know. Nobody ever asked me how I ended up on crutches, and I never asked anybody how they ended up at the games. And for me, that was a really important part of it, that whiz part, that wounded, that injured, that sick. And archery was, for me, it was the beautiful sport where everybody competed against one another. There were no categories. So there, apart from beginner, compound, or the open, everybody was pulled together. Did not matter if you were missing limbs.
No,
Did not
it
matter
didn't.
if you were blind. You would be pitched against everybody else. And for me, that's a complete celebration of what these games are about.
Yeah.
Nobody wants a favor. Everybody just wants an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, and let's do it. Let's compete.
and if anything, it was comparing equipment. Like, what's that? Why have you got that? What does it do? And then the next time you see each other, like, you've just bought it, or or you order it right there and then. You're like, well, I want to give that a go. Even with equipment like crutches, or why is the bottom of your crutch like a wobbly bit? Why is that better? Like, sharing that kind of stuff as well, yeah.
Well, I remember Ficey, he did the mouth release, didn't he?
Yeah.
I can remember looking at it thinking, why do armed archers not do that? Because it's almost like a trigger. It's almost like it's a far cleaner release I can do on my fingers. I wonder why. And it just opened my eyes up completely to, different ability rather than disability, isn't it? You know, just a different ability across there.
And I think for people like myself that had only been shooting for a year, being exposed to what it might be like if you went to like a Commonwealth Games, or you were with a team of coaches that trained you, that looked at you in a different way, that had these cameras that looked from you from all angles, and like all the crazy stuff that you would never have seen because you've never been part of a club at that level, or a group of people at that level. So that was cool. And having people like yourself with experience in that area was really cool to see.
It was fascinating for me because I had experience, but I no longer had talent, if that makes sense. You know, so I was not shooting at the level, but just to watch everybody go through on those journeys, that was because I almost got a backseat, didn't I? You know, whenever people were getting coached, sitting back and watching the likes of yourself and Steve, you know, and just coming through like those ground hammers. Ian, it is Ian Hubbard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Never used his
Dave,
first name. Dave Hubbard. Dave
yeah.
Hubbard. Yeah, sorry. Dave Hubbard and Bland, was it?
He's Ian.
Ian Bland.
Yeah.
You know, seeing these people who, you know, there's some people who I just mentioned there who had very little goals in life months before, and all of a sudden they're sat in front of the press, in front of the media, shooting to a really high level in an international competition. You know, it just shows the impact of what a bit of belief in someone's potential can do to them.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
It's insane. It's insane.
And I remember we went to the Invictus Games. We were selected. Everybody went, and it was a real strong team in front of Tower Bridge. And having Harry come over, and like little things like the paper that he used to read the thing off blew into the wind, and he had to go and get it, and we were like, woo.
Yeah. And the dog started barking.
Yeah. And you, because you and me were stood together near the Jaguar. I don't know, was it you know the type of car?
F-type, I think it was.
F-type.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've got all the media looking at us, and we had to all keep it quiet, and that was a crazy day. Yeah,
it was bizarre, and I can remember. I think that was the first time the Prince had been heavily involved in the Invictus Games. So he had announced it, but that was the first kind of coming together.
Yeah.
And then it was a bizarre thing of looking around, because we've been quite isolated within the archery camp and the archery camp alone, but seeing so many familiar faces, people who had been through Headley Court through the recovery process with, people who had seen in on TV shows and stuff like that, talking about Afghanistan, Iraq, being within the military. It was a humbling group of people to be amongst.
Massively.
Absolutely incredible, yeah. And I think Dave Henson said it best whenever, he gave his closing speech at the end of the games, where he talked about kicking the ass out of life. That for that short period, everybody who was part of that were absolutely kicking the ass out of life. It was just a phenomenal experience to be part of.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Massively.
Great memories.
But in regards to Invictus, you focus solely on archery. Others did multiple events. I also concentrated on archery. But how did you fare? How was the archery and Invictus experience for you in London?
So because of my experience, I think that was a big part of the incentive to select me to be the archery team captain for recurve. So all of the Olympic style of bow, I was the team captain for. A guy called Andy, he was selected as the compound team captain. So we kind of worked buddy system. We were the largest competition at the games. So I think there was 120 people in the open class. So in order for you to get through to the medals phase, you had to come within the top 16. And then what would happen was 16 would shoot against number 1, 15 would shoot against number 2, and it was a sudden death shoot off. So if you scored high, you won. That was it, shit bust. And I managed to, I believe, I think I finished in first place. I think Dave Hubber was second, and you came third.
And I was third.
Third, yeah. Wasn't it? Yeah. So we Brits, we placed in the top 4, and there was always this tough thing, because there was probably 4 of us who were tight right at that top. So me, Dave, yourself, and Steve Gill.
Yeah.
And it was always tough. And I can remember turning round, and I had said to the coaches, and I had said to Andy, and I had said to Martin Clough from Invictus Games himself, top 3 British, that's who represents. And I don't care who it is, and I don't care who's had the best form all the way up into here. This is going off performance off the top 3. So even if I had a shocker, but I still placed myself at number, there was no way I was going to go on it. And I can remember having that thought. And then you had shot a blinder. Steve had underperformed, but Steve's scores would have been about the same as your blinder, wouldn't it? And there was that real tough moment of people were legit coming up and saying, "So who's the team?" And I was like, "It's the 3 that's qualified." You cannot argue with numbers. You cannot argue with performance. That is where we go. So that was where I went. And I'm not gonna lie, that was a tough night. I've had to make some tough decisions in my life, but just knowing that was it, and you'll know how important that representation was at the final. Feeling like I was maybe taking that away from somebody, that was tough. But also, you'd earned your place. So, was I taking it away from somebody? Or was I, and yeah, that was really strange, mate. So I don't think I've ever shared that with you before, but that was tough. Yeah, because the 4 of us were so tight and just constantly. In fact, I think we had done a mock shoot off, hadn't we?
Yes.
In a couple of weeks before.
Yeah. And
it was all of us again.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were all points apart. So yeah, but I think that goes the credit the coaches of how great a system where they were able to bring multiple people up to that level and perform at the same standard. I think that's credit to them. So yeah, that was tough. There were lots of personnel issues that were going on in the background, lots of personnel challenges, family challenges, stuff that I got involved with as a team captain, which I didn't want the team to know about and I didn't want the team aware of. But that was very grinding on me. And the games were really, really enjoyable. But a lot of that stuff took a bit of the enjoyment away, if I'm really honest. That for me, it was all about the process leading up to it. In the games themselves, finished them first in the qualification, went through the shoot-offs, performed really, really well right up to the semi-final. And then something happened in my match against Steve where my performance dropped. So I was beating him 4-0. And then I can remember stood aiming at the target and something in my head said, wouldn't it be funny if you missed? And I missed the target completely, mate.
Yeah.
And I got the yips and I threw the arrow. Then it ended up 4-4. Steve came all the way back and then I managed just to beat him in the final set. Went through to the final against Dave Hubber. Did you shoot against Steve? What's it?
No. So in the knockout phase, I was up against an Australian who was like number 14 or wherever it might have been.
Yes.
And I had the wrong mindset, the inexperienced side of things. Well, this is easy. He's like number 14. I've seen him shoot. He was shooting on my target and he was freaking missing the target.
Yeah.
And it was like 5-5. And it was the final arrow closest to the middle, and he beat me.
You see, I missed that because we were all shooting those stages at the same time, weren't we?
So it was 5-5. He had the better shot. I think we both got 9s or something, or I might have got an 8, but he was closer. And he just turned around to me and went, "Sorry, mate, I don't know where that came from." And I was fuming. I was fuming. I went off. I rang my mum and I was like, "I just fucked it up." And I was fuming. I was packing away my gear. And then coach came over, Tony. He was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I messed up, didn't I?" And he was like, "Yeah, you did. But you still got a team event to go.
Shooting, yeah.
So stop packing your kit away."
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I think that was part of the conversation. That was your level of performance quite a bit lower than you were in the shoot individually? Was it?
Sorry,
in your head-to-heads.
Yes, my head-to-head was lower.
Was way lower. So
because he got the better of me.
But Steve was performing really, really well in the head-to-heads.
Yes,
and I think that's what caused that thing. Yeah. And I was there like, I can't. We've said it's on performance in that shoot, and you decisively beat Steve in that shoot. So that's where we're going, and that's where a bit of that thing was coming from. But I was like, fucking, I hate it because I love you, I love Steve, and I'm making an impossible situation here, But so I didn't get to see that because I was shooting at the same time. Yeah.
And then, so how did yours end? How did your?
I went through to the final against Dave.
Yeah.
In my mind, he smashed me from pillar to post. I've looked at it since. He beat me by 1 point in the first 3 ends. He beat me by 2 points in the next 3, and then he beat me by 1 point in the third. So he won 6-0. So he did beat me from pillar to post. But actually, whenever you look at it,
was so close. Yeah,
it was very close. But may all credit to Dave. Dave shot like a man possessed.
He was just constantly at awesome level. Yeah. Like he did phenomenal.
Couldn't break it. No, and there was an opportunity where I had to get I think I had to get a 9 or a 10 with my final arrow and a hit an 8 to level it or something, or to just to be 1 point off. But I was whenever at the time I was like, fuck, it's gone. But the team match was then after it. So I then had to pick myself back up again and be able to perform. And actually my performance in the team was really strong because I was in the middle, so I was doing the left and the right target, switching between the two. And actually I shot far better in the team than I did in the individual completely.
As did I.
Yeah.
And when we got up to the line for the semi-final, we were up against the Australians. And the Australian that beat me looked at me, I don't know if you remember this, and he just said, "This is going to be payback." Yeah. And I said, "Yes." Yeah. And you, me, and Dave, we smashed it. We all shot amazing. Yeah. And 6-0 whitewash. See you later. Bye.
We didn't lose a single set.
No.
Throughout the whole competition.
No.
Yeah.
Then straight to the final with the Netherlands, and we were strong again.
It was insane. So it was a gold in the team event. We had a gold, silver, bronze in the individual event. in the novice event, I think we won a bronze, but we won gold in the team novice. And then the compounds, yeah, they won gold for team.
Yes. Yeah.
And then a couple of medals in the we had Mikey.
Yeah, Mikey Hall.
Mikey Hall, yeah. So no, it was incredible, but no, I keep going back. It was the routine, it was the rhythm, it was the purpose that was powerful. My medals are underneath my bed. I've not looked at them for must be about 2 years. Nice to have.
Yeah.
But the memories are
the memories and the team around us, right? The team is what made it.
They were so good.
Really, really good.
Yeah. So no, that, and it was strange because I met Jaguar Land Rover at the Invictus Games, and I remember that gave me a bit of a kick up the backside. People were telling me I couldn't work, and I was thinking I can work. So I got in touch with Jaguar Land Rover, and I was like, guys, I seen you at the Invictus Games. I heard some people saying that you're doing a bit of resettlement stuff. Can I come and work for you? Yeah, why not? And they give me a placement. So it was meant to be a couple of weeks. Ended up there for 6 weeks. Ended up getting put with quite a responsibility of running a large event for graduates and apprentices who were joining the organisation. 1,200 of them in total. We're talking multi-millions of pounds to set this event up. And I was bringing in all of the speakers, arranging the venues, making sure all of the right people were in the right place at the right time. And then it was through them that I met this people performance company called Lane 4. So a cracking people performance organisation set up by ex-Olympians and that there. And Jaguar Land Rover was never going to be a job. It was too far away from where I lived. So I was living in hotels up there throughout the week. But whenever this company, Lane 4, whenever they heard that I wasn't going to be an employee at JLR, they'd heard me talking a little bit about my military past and what JLR had done for me and the impact of the Invictus Games. They were like, you kind of fit our profile. You don't have any of the academic stuff, any of the consultancy stuff in the background, but we think you're a good fit. Would you mind coming and working for us for a bit? I was like, hell yes. Hell yes. So I left the military on the 24th of December, and I started Lane 4 on I think it was the 4th of January.
Nice.
So I went straight from military life into civilian life, and I've been in that kind of world ever since. Worked as far west as the United States, as far east as Poland. And now I work for this fantastic little consultancy. They're called Clear Track Performance, set up by an ex-professional rugby player, Mark Snowy-Soden. And him and his wife run the company. And loads of professional athletes. So we've got a couple of ex-England rugby players, ex-Ireland and GB Lions players, SO19 specialist firearms officers, got ex-UK Special Forces. We're like a behavioural specialist company, so we work with people who work within high-risk industries, so people who are constantly exposed to traffic, the vehicles, work on motorways and stuff like that there. What we do is we take our learnings from our background and we apply it into their world. So I talk about me getting caught up with that amygdala hijack in Afghanistan, even though I was really, really professional. You know what? This is what happened whenever I was under pressure. And it's not about us turning around and saying about how we were the best, but it's about us making those touch points real to those people whenever they're working in those worlds. And it's amazing, we run high pressure simulations, we call them experiential activities. So we'll bring a team in and we'll get them to do counter-terrorism hostage rescue for the day. And, we have these UK Special Forces guys, we have these specialist firearms officers, and we run them through the skills and drills. And we're not there to test them to see if they can be specialist firearms officers. We're giving them a set of rules and a set of principles and tactics, techniques, procedures, and we're seeing how well they can perform them under immense levels of pressure. And then we dial it back. What's this? So what? How does this relate to your workplace? And it's amazing how much the crossover is really there. Okay. So it's fascinating stuff, mate. It's a tiring job, but it's a great job, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Absolutely love it.
So being in that field since you left, do you think that's helped your transition back to civilian life?
Massively, yeah. Yeah, so there were a couple of great people within Lane 4, and I think it was the sporting background, the sporting heritage. Lots of people were there for the right reasons, and it's a bit like the Invictus Games. You know, they had a purpose, they had a vision, they had a kind of way of working that was very authentic and genuine. And then whenever I went across the clear track performance, it's amazing how similar the rugby world is with the military world. Attitudes, beliefs, behaviours, and mindsets. They are just exactly the same. And it makes me reflect and think, whenever I knew I was getting a rugby playing soldier at Harrogate, I always knew I was getting a good one. Always knew I was getting a good one, you know. The police are very much the same. The police firearms officers I would describe them as very cool blue, very methodical, very process-driven individuals. Not like you would see on TV, and not grenade throwing, door kicking, trigger pulling people at all. Very methodical, very thoughtful, like to gain all of the information, then they'll come to their conclusion. Don't get me wrong, if needs must, they can do what they need to do, but they are very cool, very calm, very analytical. And they're just this amazing contrast of we see one another for all of our attributes and all of our skills and what we bring to the party. But I know what I bring, and they let me bring it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
That's cool.
So all of the military stuff, it's all still there, and I roll with it.
You
so
roll
yeah,
with it.
Yeah.
That's good.
But
Well, Gary, I think this brings us pretty much up to date. So it is that time in the podcast for your episode where we can get some advice from you. Now, the first bit of advice is for people that are thinking of joining the military. Have you got any advice for them?
Yes, do it. So my nephew's just joined the military. He's joined the engineers. I didn't tell you this beforehand. He's 5th generation. We did not give him any advice. His brother joined in 88. Well, his dad joined in 88, and he's still serving. Didn't give him any advice. All we did was tell him, join up, show up, do what your instructors tell you. I suppose one thing I have seen online, which I would urge people not to do, is run with weight before you go there.
To what, sorry?
Run with weight.
Oh,
so
run
people
with weight.
put
Right,
burdens on, and they just go out running, okay? The military's got a process where it will set you up to be in the right position to pass your assessments, okay? So don't worry about putting weight on your back. Don't worry about going up into the hills. Just go running. Just get your fitness to an okay standard. That is the only bit of advice I would give to anyone. And just go and do it. I would never turn anybody away from the military, because it's created this world where, you know what, mate, I work in a fantastic job. You know, I love going to work. It pays the bills, and you know, I would not have been in this position had I not been within the military.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would urge everybody to go and do it and have fun.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good advice, actually. And I think you're the first to advise that, not putting the weight on. Let the army build you up. That's a good shout.
I've seen behind the scenes. There's scientists, there's PTIs. Everybody is involved in it. Let the system take you through.
That's cool. Second bit of advice. This is for veterans. So any advice you've got for them, and that could be for people that are about to transition to be a veteran for the first time, or perhaps for people that have been out for a while, and advice for veterans.
Veterans are their own worst critics. I always hear veterans talking themselves out of stuff. I always hear veterans giving themselves reasons why they can't do it. I'd love veterans to be as big an advocate for themselves as they are for everybody else. So veterans are always the first to tell you that you've got the ability, you've got the skills, you've got all of these different attributes that make you who you are, but they're shit at saying it to themselves.
Yeah.
So sometimes if they're thinking about doing something, I'd love them to imagine you're talking to Jimmy, and Jimmy is you, but it's not you. What advice would you give to that person? What would you tell them to do? We never give ourselves the own advice that we're willing to give to other people. And we don't believe in ourselves as much as we believe in others. Yeah. We're shit at it. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, good advice. Give the advice you might give to others to yourself.
And I'm going to say this. So I've advised by myself. I've stood in the room and worked with business leaders from all around the world. Some of these are within businesses that everybody will have within their fridge. Big names. I was only a full screw within the military, and they're hanging off every word that I'm saying and really taking in all of the lessons that I had. And I had that as a junior NCO.
Yeah.
We have a wealth of knowledge. We have a level of experience that is not open to everybody within the world. And once we learn how to relate our experiences to the business world, it's unbelievable the impact it has. It's unbelievable the impact it has. So you just need to have a little bit of belief in yourself to put yourself in that position.
Yeah. Good advice, man. Good advice. Well, like I said, it brought us to the end of your episode. How was it for you coming on the show?
I think these are cathartic.
Yeah?
Whenever I started to reflect on my background and stuff, it's nice to wander down those little lanes every so often, isn't it? And just remind yourself kind of the journey.
Yeah.
Which is the important part.
For sure.
How was it for you, eh?
Yeah, it was really good. I'm glad. Well, like I said to you, I've wanted you on since I started this project of mine many years ago, and you're here now. It's done. I've got you on. It's
my
great.
First podcast,
and it's your first.
My first podcast.
Well, you did pretty good, mate. You did pretty good.
Happy days.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything that you've gone through, from your time in the military to even your civilian life before and after service, and also for your time. We don't have infinite amount of it, and you gave some of that today. So thank you.
Thank you, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Good. And I say this to all my guests. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, buddy.
No worries. It's been an awesome recording. Thanks, Gary.
Happy.
This has been Military Veterans Podcast, out.